Welcome, everybody, to the Frontline Revolution podcast. I am your host, Rachel O'Neill, and today I am joined by my good friend Jill. And I'm going to let her introduce herself because she does something very cool, and I will butcher it if I try to explain it. So, Jill, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everyone. My name is Jill, and I have been a nurse for 12 years and am just now recently stepping into more of the role of a ketamine coach. So I am helping people who are either microdosing or macrodosing, which we can get into later, ketamine, make sense of their experiences, help them rewire their brain, help them with depression, anxiety, negative ruminating thoughts. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's back up. So you said nurse for 12 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where did you what was your primary nursing focus?
ER.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So does that where you kind of learned what ketamine was as a drug? Because I'll be honest, that's all I know of ketamine is how they use it in the ER.
Yeah, interestingly enough, actually, ER kind of had nothing to do with my ketamine path. Well, I say that, but actually looking back, that's kind of how the universe goes. But my interest in psychedelics actually started when I was like 15. I remember taking them, magic mushrooms and LSD recreationally, and always feeling like, wow, this is so expansive and there's so much more to life than what we can see. And so that was back when I was, a teenager, and I just thought it was a phase, and so then I got into ER nursing and realized throughout my 12 years of ER nursing and then getting into hospice work and then starting to get more into, ketamine infusion. I was like, oh, I just really like working with people who are in altered states, and I like to help them make sense of what's going on in their brain. And so, yeah, that's kind of how my path trajectory went.
Okay. So let's start with the really, really basics. What is ketamine? Like what do I know what we use it for, but in your own words, what is ketamine?
So I'm going to try to explain this in a way that makes sense, because I will tell you scientifically, it is an NMDA receptor antagonist. A lot of mumbo jumbo. So what that means is it temporarily blocks the NMDA receptors, and that's what actually helps lead to antidepressant, anti-anxiety, and neuroplastic effects. Neuroplasticity meaning literally creating new pathways in your brain. And so it differs from other antidepressants that work on your dopamine or your serotonin receptors. So it doesn't really have to you don't really have to wait 4 weeks for it to start working. The antidepressant effects can be very quick.
Which is different from normal antidepressants because you have to build up before they'll start actually doing the job that they're supposed to do. You don't just take it. It's not like ibuprofen. You can't just take it and 45 minutes later your maximum effects and you feel better and everything's great.
100%. Yeah. And those other antidepressants are literally changing the chemicals in your brain. So if it's not the way that your brain chemicals needed to be changed, then you could sometimes just waste 4 weeks of trying this new medication out that doesn't really work. So that's the effect of ketamine for depression and PTSD. What it actually is used for in the emergency department, which is what you have probably experienced, is it is a dissociative anesthetic. So used at very high doses, it actually kind of takes you out of the experience that you're actually going through, which we would always use it for kids to put their broken bones back into place. And actually, if you think about that in the sense of the way that we are using it, is it takes you out of your body in a way. And so I like to say it's really transpersonal, like it's beyond the limits of your personal identity. So it kind of helps you to, if you have any sort of trauma, I say that like ketamine will zoom you out and allow you to look at that trauma from a different perspective and kind of be like, wow, that's not the memory that I made in my head about like, it really isn't as bad as I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
And how that works is essentially imagine the brain as like a busy city with a bunch of roads,
Mm-hmm.
and the roads are your neural pathways in your brain. And then you have cars, which are the signals traveling between your brain. So the NMDA receptors are traffic lights at intersections, and they control how much traffic or brain activity flows.
Mm-hmm.
So in people with depression, PTSD, anxiety, the traffic lights stay red for too long. So they
Mm-hmm.
slow down and they block the brain signals. And that's what leads to these stuck repetitive thought patterns, emotional distress, depression, rumination.
Mm-hmm.
So then enter ketamine. Ketamine comes in, and you can either use it as an infusion, as they're called troches, they're like waxy kind of dissolving
Mm-hmm.
tablets.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it IM, intramuscular, or you can do it intranasal.
Mm-hmm.
And so ketamine comes in and it blocks those NMDA receptors. So it turns off the red lights. So that release allows the traffic now to flow more freely, which helps
Mm-hmm.
the signals move to new areas of the brain. And this is important. This is why integration is so important, because ketamine and really all psychedelics can be kind of like a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a psychedelic experience, or you're microdosing mushrooms, or you're microdosing ketamine, and you're creating new pathways, but you keep going down the same thought patterns, that's not really going to help, right? Like, it's important to have someone to integrate with and someone that can coach you to help you change those negative thought patterns into more positive ones,
Mm-hmm.
and help you make sense of what exactly your brain is going through.
Mm-hmm.
Ketamine also has this ability to increase glutamate. And what that means, essentially, in our analogy, is kind of like adding more roads and bridges on the highway so that there's more connections in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
But then once ketamine kind of gets traffic moving again, and then it helps to build these healthier connections and helps people to process emotions and thoughts more effectively.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
kind of how it works.
That's a really good analogy because working in healthcare, we only hear about drugs a certain way. Ketamine, we use it to help to help kids with their pain, and like you said, give them that kind of out of body experience so they don't know that we're resetting their broken bone. And I think a lot of, I want to say civilians, it's not the right word, but a lot of non-medical people, they only hear about that in certain ways. And the same way with other psychedelics like LSD and mushrooms, they only hear about it as a bad thing. Not a bad, but you know what I mean? Like that, oh, it's a drug that you can use to get high. That's the way most people think about it. And before getting into nurse coaching and talking to coaches like you, I thought the same way. I was like, people don't need to use mushrooms. Mushrooms are bad. People don't need to use LSD. LSD is bad. People don't need to use ketamine except for in the emergency room, because ketamine is a drug that is used in the emergency room. But that's not the case, which is really, really cool. So, talk to me about, what does microdosing and macrodosing of ketamine, what does that look like in practice?
I just want to touch on something you said too. We are really trying to undo a lot of the damage that was done in the 60s and 70s. That's
Mm-hmm.
really what's happening. I mean, there was a lot of people who were part of the psychedelic movement back in those days
Mm-hmm.
that were seen as criminals, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And these medicines, I call medicines, were kind of, I don't know what the word is, like,
They were almost like stigmatized
yes,
as,
thank
something
you.
bad.
Yes, they were stigmatized. And like, I mean, do you remember like the commercial of the egg being
Yep,
splattered in
this
the
is your
pan?
brain
It
on
said, this
drugs.
is your brain on drugs, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
in reality, like, mushrooms, ayahuasca, ketamine, all of these medicines have this ability to help your brain grow. And so maybe I don't know what happened there, if like maybe these things weren't fully understood and then they were made illegal and then they were stigmatized. But now we're kind of coming out of that. It's kind of, we're calling it like the psychedelic renaissance right now. Like we're kind of coming out of that. And I think we're starting to realize that these medicines do have major healing potential, major, and they are really helping people to get out of these negative thought patterns, these depressive episodes, PTSD, helping tons of veterans. So yeah, I just wanted to say that about where we're at legally, right? Like there's a lot going on in that space, and we kind of have to tread lightly so that we don't go back to where we were.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we've had such an advancement with like medical marijuana, and because that's the one that everybody knows the most about. Everybody knows about weed and how it's legal now in some places, and it's legal in some capacities for medicinal purposes, and this, that, and the other. Tennessee, I don't know where we stand on our weed politics. I don't have a lot of knowledge because I've never needed it outside of when I worked in oncology. Patients would be like, hey, I wasn't eating, your chemo made me sick, I started smoking weed, and now I want to eat. Great. Perfect. Keep smoking weed. I don't care, because if it means you're going to eat when you haven't eaten in a month, smoke all the weed you want,
Totally.
People are so, I don't want to say uneducated, but they are, because everybody hears about drugs like these, and it's automatically, oh, they're on drugs. Oh, they're a drug dealer. Oh, they're this. Honestly, I trust people on the road that are high before I would trust people on the road that are drunk. Like it's so much safer than some other legal things that so this is a very fascinating realm that we are entering in healthcare, in terms of holistic things that we can get into to help our patients. I think it's great that we're even thinking about doing these things.
I totally didn't answer the microdose macrodose question, but I can
Okay,
do that
yes.
now.
Well, let's go back to that now. All right, so tell me what are macrodosing and microdosing?
Okay, so, and I'm kind of talking in regards to ketamine and mushrooms, because that's kind of what's been going on more recently. So a microdose is a tiny amount that you take either every day or every third day or something like that. Usually with mushrooms, it's every third day, and it's like 0.1. It is a very subperceptual dose. Like, and with ketamine, it can go from 30 milligrams up to 80 milligrams or 100. That would be like a microdose. And that is kind of like little tiny, I'm going to use another analogy.
Please.
I like to view when you're taking these medicines as like planting seeds, right? So there's an important part before you take these medicines, which is the prep, all right? Getting your garden bed ready, making sure it's tilled, making sure you've got brand new fresh soil. And then taking the medicine, either in a microdose or a macrodose, is like literally putting the seeds into the ground. And then is when you're kind of watering it, right? And so even if you're microdosing, it's important to continually water those seeds and put the good thoughts back into your brain so that you are not, again, going down those same old pathways. So a microdose is kind of nice for people that can't go and do a gigantic dose if they can't afford it, because ketamine can be pricey at the macrodose route. And so a macrodose is more of like, I call it like a ceremony. It's where you prepare a few days before, maybe even a few weeks before. And sometimes people do this for ayahuasca. They will prepare for 4 weeks before their ayahuasca. And then when you sit with the medicine, with ketamine specifically, it is an experience that's probably going to take you out of your body a little bit. People explain it as, like I said, transpersonal, beyond the idea of identity. Some people experience ego death. Some people experience this beautiful expansiveness and this connection with everything, a feeling of love like they've never felt before. And ketamine is an interesting one because I call it like you're stepping into a portal when you take ketamine, because so much can happen on the actual macrodose ketamine day that you're like, I have no idea what just happened. And again, important to talk to a coach or a therapist or somebody afterwards, you know, especially within the next couple of days, because that's when your brain is like prime. But it's opening doorways, even though you don't notice it during the ketamine experience, because it's very like, whoa, I'm just watching this very cool movie. Like, I have no idea what's going on. But then when you can have somebody that's skilled to like kind of pull at what's coming out for you in the next couple of days, it can be truly transformative. Like there have been, I mean, I know for myself, just the tiniest little things that come out over the next couple of days. And I talked to an integration coach and they're like, well, did you notice that this is coming up and this has come up 3 days in a row? And I'm like, huh. And it uses a little bit of parts work, which is like internal family systems. And so internal family systems is, you know, it's essentially that we all have these parts inside of us that we've made as children, and they come out in us as adults whenever we are feeling like we need protection or we don't feel safe. And so these parts are protective, and that's kind of what comes out whenever we are triggered. And sometimes these parts get so blended with who we are that we can't even see them. We don't even know that they're happening. But ketamine zooms you out and allows you to like see all of these parts. It allows you to like see your team, I say. Like, wow, are all parts of you ready for this ketamine experience? Because it truly is not just you. Like there are several different parts coming into that ceremony day. And then also integration, right? And then taking what you learn from those parts. Okay, what does that part need? What can I give it? How can it feel safe so that it doesn't feel triggered again? And it doesn't react and it doesn't completely blow up all of my relationships, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So then how does it work? Because I know this is a bad analogy, but it's not even an analogy. It's just it's my brain is going in a bad way, and I'm sure it's probably correct. But so how, I know you can get mushrooms, you know, from off the street, essentially. And I know you can get ketamine off the street. I would assume you wouldn't want to, because drugs off the street is a bad thing to do. You shouldn't do it. How do people get into ketamine or mushrooms in a therapeutic sense? Like what if I wanted to start doing ketamine therapy or, you know, microdosing with mushrooms, what would that look like? How would I like is it a state by state thing? Is it like how does it work?
This is such a great question. I really appreciate you bringing this up. It is different state by state. And so I am practicing in California and anything goes here, essentially.
Yeah.
So there are ketamine infusion clinics that you can go to. You can also go online and do like an at-home prescription service. There's a bunch of different companies out there. And then with mushrooms, you're able to actually sign up for a church and go and buy them at the church, or you can donate to people. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get those microdoses here. And then again, the ketamine infusion would be more of like the macro dose. And then there's also many different ways to do plant medicine ceremonies around here in California. In other states, I'm not sure exactly which ones are all offering ketamine microdosing legally right now. I will say that the ketamine infusions are becoming more and more popular. And I don't want to say popular. I want to say accepted. Because even like I spend some time in Utah, and that is a place that like basically doesn't even allow, you know, beer over a certain percentage. And there's actually some ketamine clinics that are popping up in Utah. So that's like, you know, really promising. So I think it's
Yeah.
kind of working its way out. And I will say that like the information and the data that we are collecting on veterans is huge. Like
Mm-hmm.
because basically they have approved it for veterans, and the VA actually will pay for these veterans to get ketamine treatment, which is so
Awesome.
amazing. Like that is like
Yeah.
such a huge step for us to be
Mm-hmm.
there. And these veterans have such good outcomes with, and with the macrodosing, it's essentially like what we try to do is we do like 6 sessions or so within
Mm-hmm.
2 months to kind
Mm-hmm.
of get on top of it. And then they might come once a month, they might come every 4 months, they might come every
Mm-hmm.
6 months, they might come once a year. Because
Mm-hmm.
so many of them actually have such good results that they don't even have to come all the time. So I
Wow.
think with more and more of that information coming out on veterans, with all the data that we're collecting, I think that it's going to become more and more accepted and more widely available in the next coming years.
That's awesome. I mean, that just to even think about it from a veteran perspective. My husband's ex-military, and thankfully
Mm.
he was in for 26 years, and he does not have a lot of the, I don't want to say typical, but he doesn't have a lot of the PTSD, anxiety, depression diagnoses or symptoms that a lot of his friends and a lot of other people around here do. You know, I live 5 minutes from a military installation. I live right at Fort Campbell. So we have a lot of veterans and a lot of veterans that struggle with depression and anxiety and acclimating back into civilian life after they retire, or God forbid they're, discharged dishonorably because of some type of something happens. So it's great to see that there are other options out there, because a lot of our veterans around here, God love them, they go to the doctor and the doctor's like, yeah, here's a prescription for an SSRI, take it every day, here's the symptoms you might experience, which 80% of them experience. That, I made that number up, but I feel like it's a very high percentage experience more side effects than they do help from the meds that the doctors give them. And I know, Tennessee's Bible Belt Central, we are very stuck in our drugs are bad, okay, belief. And we don't have a lot of doctors that are open to even trying things like this, which blows my mind, because even from just reading the very, very few articles that I've read and talking to you and a couple of other coaches, there's a lot more good that can be had with these medicines than there is bad. So I'm hopefully things like this move forward, and more doctors realize they're not just doing it to get high. Like, it's a legitimate treatment option for some of these people, especially ones that, that the medicines we're trying now aren't helping.
100%. I really think that the other part I really want to touch on too here is like, again, with the coaching, like, because the veterans, so I work also at a ketamine infusion clinic in
Mm-hmm.
California. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of our patients are veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And the support, our clinic has so much integrity. I really love the way that they do things. I'm just gonna
Mm-hmm.
plug them. They're CIT
Please.
clinics in California. I think that the way that they do things is just so holistic and compassionate, because
Mm-hmm.
they really take prep and integration really seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with a lot of these veterans, they have a chance to finally talk to somebody about their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a chance for someone to just listen and witness and hold space for that.
Mm-hmm.
And not only on the day of the medicine, but then a few days after, they get another call. And for most of them, like, even that is, that's 50% of the healing. Like,
Yeah.
just for them to be able to have nobody to judge them and have them talk openly about their experiences. And so I think it's beautiful. I
Yeah.
really think that that's going to be kind of like our way to be like, yeah, look, this stuff works. Like, people
Mm-hmm.
need this. And also, like, in coming back to just healthcare in general, right? And like why I'm so disenchanted with the hospital, and why probably we all are, is just
Mm-hmm.
because they're trying to take the humanity out of our job. And that
Mm-hmm.
is why we all feel so burnt out. It's why we feel like we walk into the hospital and our souls are getting sucked out of our bodies because we don't
Literally.
have the chance to be human with these people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what these veterans are getting. And it's like, that's part of the medicine. You know, part
Mm-hmm.
of the medicine is seeing people and hearing people and witnessing people. And if you don't have time to do that or space,
Mm-hmm.
how is healing going to happen?
Yep. Yep. It's not, we can't just put a band-aid on it anymore and hope it goes away. And I feel like that's what we're doing right now as healthcare, as a society. We don't listen. We don't try to get to roots of problems. We don't do any of that. We just, here's a band-aid, hope it works out for you. See you later. Bye. I got to go to my next patient. And it's so frustrating. I deal with it. Both of my kids they've got anxiety and depression issues. And literally, I will take them to their medicine management nurse practitioner. And I finally had to have a talk with her. Like, look, if my kids need this medicine, okay, let's do it. But if there's something non-medicinally that I can do, let's try that first.
Mm-hmm.
If they need to go to therapy 5 days a week, let's try that first. If I need to change something in their home environment, let's try that first, because I don't want my 12 and 14-year-old kids on 7 different medicines with 107 different side effects if we can fix it without any of that, So
100%. And I'm curious, yeah, like what kind of response are you getting whenever you say that?
she was very open and honest about it, and she did give me some, hey, here's some things that we can try at home. Unfortunately, both of my kids' anxiety revolves around school. They've had very, very rough school existences for no longer than they've been alive. So this year we actually pulled them out and we're doing virtual school, and they are thriving. Their grades are great. We're talking about getting off some of these medicines. The only downside to that is they've lost that communication with the people that they do love and the friends that they can make. They don't have that. So we're trying to supplement other ways to get them out and meeting friends that don't involve them going to school and being bullied for who they are as people.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad to hear that they're thriving in
Mm-hmm.
another space. I don't have children, but I have heard of many parents that have a very similar story.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and like just touching on that connection part, like yeah, that is so important, right? Like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like COVID like just kind of put us into this like hole of
Yes.
like can't see people's faces, don't talk to them, like, and it's like I don't know about how it was for you, but in California it lasted way longer than it needed
Mm-hmm.
to. And
Mm-hmm.
you could feel, I remember like taking masks off and seeing people's smiles for the first time and like how good it made me feel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, imagine children not seeing that
Yeah.
like in their formative years, right? Like when this like connection of like safety and like love to other people is like forming and they can't see people's smiles. Like,
Yes.
so yeah, the connection piece is such a big, it's such a big piece. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, hopefully you can find some like other ways, you know? I mean, it's
Yeah.
cool because you can have them do other things like camps and like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, they can meet other kids that are doing virtual school and
Yeah.
they probably have even a better connection than they would
Mm-hmm.
in real school where they're trying to kind of like control what the kids are doing all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And we've done a couple of because we're honestly, our town and Fort Campbell, they're big on homeschooling. There's a lot of homeschool going on with these military families, which is great. Awesome. I totally get it. My next door neighbor homeschools her kids. I understand it. So there's a lot of resources for homeschool kids to meet each other outside of the traditional go to school sense. So we are doing a lot of that. And then
Hmm.
not right now because it's freaking 20 degrees outside and it's
Oh no.
freezing. So we're not going out. But in the spring and the summer, we plan on doing a whole lot more of that get outside, get some fresh air, go meet some folks, let's go to the park type of stuff.
That's so cool. I'm so glad that you're doing that with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds really healthy.
That's what I'm trying for.
You're doing it. You're doing it.
So, Jill, before we end, anything else that you want to touch on, you want to say? Or you could shout out like where can people find you if they want to talk to you, if they want to connect, learn more about what you do? Where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. My business, it's called Conscious Alchemy Coaching. And so you can find that at consciousalchemycoaching.com, or my Instagram, Conscious Alchemy Coaching. That's where you can find me. You can book a call with me and let's just talk about what comes up for you, and let's see if it's a good fit and see if maybe we can try to get you a prescription.
Awesome.
And then also, yeah, CIT clinics in California. I just want to shout out to them because they are doing really, really, really good work. And if you are interested in doing an IV infusion of ketamine at a clinic with a just absolutely gorgeous set and setting, amazing prep, amazing integration, your life will be transformed. Yeah, if you come to that clinic. So
Awesome. Awesome. And I will
yeah.
put that in the show notes so you guys will have it. You can look it up. You can reach out to Jill and tell her, hey, I listened, it was great, or say good things. We don't want negativity here. So only send her messages if they are good messages. We don't do negativity in this space. All right. Well, if you don't have anything else, I think we've covered a lot, and it's been a really great conversation about the advancements that we are making and need to make in healthcare, especially in terms of psychedelics.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate the time and space that you carved out for this today. And
You
yeah,
are
I look
welcome.
forward to connecting more.
All right, awesome. Well, with that being said, guys, we appreciate you listening. We hope you have a good rest of your day, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Bye bye.